The park was full of noise that afternoon. People were talking, children were running, and tourists were taking pictures. In the middle of the park stood an old public piano. Its paint was peeling, a few keys were dusty, and most people walked past it without even looking at it. But today, something unusual happened around that piano. A man with tired eyes and worn-out clothes slowly walked toward it. He looked like someone who had not slept well for many nights. His shoes were old, his backpack was torn, and his face carried the weight of many sad years. People noticed him immediately. A few whispered to each other, some laughed quietly. They looked at him the way people look at someone who does not belong. No one thought he was important. No one thought he could do anything special to them. He was just another poor man wandering in the park. The kind of person people ignore every day without thinking. The man stopped in front of the piano and gently touched the wooden edge. His hands were shaking a little, not from weakness, but from something deeper: fear, memory, and hope all mixed together. After a few seconds, he turned to the people nearby and asked in a soft voice, "Can I play that old piano?" His voice was polite but quiet, like someone who was used to being ignored. The people around looked at each other. A group of teens snickered. One of them joked loudly, "Yeah, sure, go ahead. Maybe you'll break it." Some adults smiled in a way that wasn't friendly. Others simply stepped aside, not because they respected him, but because they didn't want to stand too close. The man heard the whispers, the judgments, and the laughter, but he stayed calm. He sat down on the small, chipped wooden bench attached to the piano. He ran his fingers across the keys gently, feeling the dust and uneven texture. For a few moments he didn't play anything at all. He simply breathed slowly, as if gathering strength. His hands rested on the keys like someone greeting an old friend they had not seen for a long time. People around started losing interest. A couple walked away, shaking their heads as if expecting a disaster. The teens kept recording him on their phones, hoping something funny or embarrassing would happen. To them, he was entertainment, not a human with a story. One boy said, "Watch this. He's going to make the piano cry." They all laughed loudly, but the man didn't respond. He didn't look up or get angry. Instead, he closed his eyes. His shoulders moved slightly as he breathed in. For a brief second, a small smile appeared on his lips, a sad smile, but real, like a person remembering a time when life was better. When people believed in him, inside his mind, he heard another voice. Not the rude ones from the crowd, but a gentle voice from long ago. It sounded like a woman telling him, "Play, don't be afraid." That memory warmed him. It gave him a reason to ignore everything around him. At that moment, the wind blew softly, leaves rustled, and a quiet stillness fell over the small area around the piano. Even the noisy kids nearby seemed to pause for a second. The man lifted his hands slowly, his fingers hovered above the keys. His heart beat fast. He was nervous, but he also felt something else, something he had not felt in years. A spark of courage. The crowd still didn't expect anything great. Some waited for him to mess up. Others waited to laugh. To them, he was nobody. A stranger who did not look like a musician or a star or someone who could surprise them. They had already judged him before he played a single note. But the man did not play for them. He wasn't there to impress anyone or prove anything. He was sitting in front of the piano because something inside him needed to come alive again. He needed to touch the keys. He needed to feel music again. Even if only once, even if only for himself. As he took another deep breath, he whispered softly to his own hands, "You can do this." It was not loud enough for anyone else to hear, but it was enough for him. His fingers pressed down on the first key, then another, then another. The sound was soft, a little shaky, but real. And in that small moment, without anyone realizing yet, the man no one took seriously was about to change everything. The people who laughed would soon fall silent. The ones who ignored him would soon gather close. And the old piano, forgotten for years, would soon sing louder than it ever had before. Begins with the man still sitting at the old piano. But now the story travels into his past, into the memories that shaped him and broke him. Many people in the park assumed he was just a nobody, but they had no idea how heavy his life had become, or how far he had fallen to reach this silent moment at the piano. Years ago, he was known as Daniel, a name that once appeared on small music posters in his hometown. When he was young, he didn't have expensive clothes or a big home. But he had something more valuable, his mother's love and a small piano they kept in their tiny living room. His mother believed he had magic in his fingers. She worked long hours cleaning houses so she could pay for his lessons. And every night, she would sit beside him and say, "Play for me, Danny." Daniel played with joy, with pride. With a heart full of dreams, he won small competitions in school. He performed at community events. People knew he was talented. His mother would clap the loudest, with tears in her eyes because she believed her son could become someone great. But life is not kind to everyone. When Daniel turned 18, his mother got sick. The sickness came suddenly, like a storm he never saw coming. He stopped everything, competitions, performances. His dreams, he stopped all of it just to take care of her. Their money ran out fast, the medical bills piled up. Daniel worked day and night at small jobs. But it was never enough. One night, he sat beside her bed. Holding her thin hand, she whispered, "Don't stop playing. Danny, promise me." Her voice was weak, but her eyes were full of love. Daniel promised her, but deep inside, he knew he could not keep that promise. He was drowning in responsibility, fear, and sadness. When she passed away, Daniel felt like the world had gone silent. The piano in their house became painful to look at. Every note reminded him of her voice. Her smile, her sacrifices. He moved away, trying to escape everything that hurt him. But pain travels with you. No matter where you go, your heart follows. He drifted from city to city, working random jobs, sleeping in cheap rooms, sometimes even shelters. His clothes got older. His hands lost the softness of a pianist and became rough from labor. But one thing stayed with him, the memory of his mother's voice telling him to play. He tried many times to touch a piano again. Once at a bus station, once in a church, once in another park. But every time he sat down, grief choked him, his hands froze, and he walked away. There was always a voice inside him saying, "You can't do this anymore." But today was different. The laughter from people around him reminded him of all the moments he felt small, broken, and invisible. Yet it also reminded him of something stronger, the promise he made to his mother. Even though the world mocked him, even though he had nothing, he still had one thing left. Music lived in him, buried deep, waiting for the right moment to rise again. As he sat at the old piano in the park, memories rushed through him like waves. The dusty keys reminded him of the piano he grew up with. His trembling hands reminded him of the fear he fought every day. And his racing heart reminded him that he wasn't done yet. Daniel breathed in slowly, trying to calm the storm inside him. He thought about the competitions he once won, the applause he once heard, the smile his mother used to give him every time he played, for the first time in years. He wanted to play not out of duty or sadness, but because his soul needed it. His mother's last words echoed again, "Don't stop playing, Danny." The teens in the park still laughed, the adults still whispered. But Daniel didn't hear them anymore. His mind was full of memories, both beautiful and painful. They pushed him forward. They lifted his fingers gently toward the keys. His hands hovered above the piano again. This time he didn't shake from fear. He shook because he was stepping back into the world he had abandoned. The world of music, the world where he once belonged. He whispered softly, "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm late." Then he breathed out and touched the piano again. His fingers pressed the first note with more confidence. It wasn't just a sound, it was a step forward. A step back into the life he lost. The second note came clearer, stronger, then another. And another. With every note, Daniel felt his heart open. His pain loosened a little. The fear, the shame, the heavy loneliness, they didn't disappear, but they stopped controlling him. People in the park didn't know what was happening inside him. But they were about to hear it, and once they did, nothing in that park would remain the same. Daniel's fingers touched the keys gently at first, but the people waiting around him still had no faith in him. The group of teens stood closer, holding their phones high, ready to capture something they could laugh at later. One of them whispered loudly, "Watch this. He's gonna mess up and run away." Their laughter was sharp and unkind. But Daniel didn't react. His eyes stayed closed, his hands resting softly on the piano, as if he was listening to a voice only he could hear. When he pressed the next note, it came out shaky. A few people snickered. Someone muttered, "Told you, he has no idea what he's doing." But Daniel wasn't thinking about them anymore. He wasn't even thinking about the park. He was far away in his mind, standing again in his childhood living room, with his mother sitting beside him, telling him to breathe, to trust his hands, to trust himself. The memory filled his chest with warmth, and for a moment, the fear fading inside him turned into something else, courage. He pressed a second note, this time stronger. Then a third, then a fourth. The sound that came out surprised even him. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, it was alive. The laughter around him got quieter, though not completely gone. A girl from the teens tilted her head. Wait. That didn't sound bad, but the others shushed her, trying to keep the moment funny, trying to make sure no one took Daniel seriously. They didn't know this man once played on small stages, once dreamed of teaching music, once believed he could change his life through melody. All they saw was a man in old clothes, sitting at a dusty piano. Daniel kept going. His hands began to remember patterns he thought he had forgotten forever. A gentle rhythm formed under his fingers. Each note seemed to pull the next one out of his heart. His shoulders relaxed, and a slow, peaceful breath left his chest. People walking past began to slow down. Some stopped a little distance away, curious. A couple pushed their stroller closer, wanting to hear better. The park's normal noise, children shouting, dogs barking, people talking, began to fade as more people turned toward the sound that was coming from the old piano. Daniel didn't see any of it. His eyes were still closed, his face softened. And for the first time in many years, he looked like a man who wasn't running from life, but meeting it, one note after another. His hands moved with growing confidence. It was as if the music inside him had been waiting years for this moment, waiting for him to finally stop being afraid. Then something changed without planning it, without thinking. Daniel played a melody he used to play for his mother every night. It was soft, gentle, full of warmth and sadness, the kind of melody that feels like a hug you can hear. As the music flowed, people around the piano fell quiet. Even the teens lowered their phones slowly, confused, unsure, amazed. The girl who spoke earlier whispered, "He's actually good." Her voice wasn't mocking anymore, it was full of surprise. The boy next to her frowned. No way, how? But he couldn't deny what he was hearing. The sound coming from the piano was too smooth, too emotional, too professional to come from someone who looked like Daniel. Daniel's fingers danced across the keys now. Each movement was full of emotion he had hidden for years. The melody rose and fell like waves, gentle but powerful. People began gathering in a circle around him. Some stood still, others sat on the ground. A little boy tugged at his father's shirt and asked, "Why is this man making the piano cry?" A woman near the front felt tears fill her eyes. She covered her mouth and whispered, "This is beautiful." She didn't know why she felt emotional. She didn't know Daniel's story. But the music was telling a story of its own, one of lost love. and a heart that refused to stop beating, even after life broke it. Daniel still didn't open his eyes. He let the music carry him. Each note was a memory, a moment he thought he had lost forever. As he played, he began to feel lighter. His mother's voice returned to him like a warm breeze. "I'm proud of you, Danny." The people around him leaned closer. Someone whispered, "Who is he?" Others shook their heads, unable to answer. They had judged him too quickly. And now they were witnessing something they never expected, near the back of the crowd. A young man started recording, not to mock, but because he realized this moment was special. This wasn't a stranger playing a piano. This was a man pouring his entire life into each note, and though the crowd didn't know it yet, this was the exact moment when the video of Daniel's performance would begin its journey around the world. A moment that would change everything for him, for the people watching, and for millions who would later hear his story. But for Daniel, it was not about going viral or becoming famous. This moment was something far greater. He had found his courage again. He had found himself again. And the people who had laughed at him minutes ago were now silent. Listening to the man they once dismissed as nobody, Daniel kept playing. And the sound from the old piano grew richer with every passing second. The air in the park felt different now, as if the wind itself had stopped to listen. People who had been laughing earlier were now frozen in silence, staring at the man they once mocked. As his fingers moved faster, something magical happened. Daniel's music began to shape the mood of the entire park. Dogs stopped barking. Children lowered their voices. Couples held each other's hands a little tighter. Even the leaves rustling on the trees seemed to sway in rhythm with the melody. It felt like the whole park was breathing with the music. Daniel still had his eyes closed, but he could feel something shifting around him. The energy in the air changed. He sensed the crowd growing larger. Yet he wasn't scared anymore. A strange calmness washed over him. The kind of calm he used to feel before stepping onto a small stage as a boy. His mother always said, "When you play from your heart, the world listens today." For the first time in years, those words felt true again. He reached a part of the melody where the notes became softer, more delicate. Every touch of his finger seemed to tell a story. People leaned forward, not wanting to miss a single note. A woman near the front wiped her tears quietly. She wasn't the only one. A man with gray hair blinked rapidly. Struggling to hide his emotions, a teenage girl hugged her backpack tightly to her chest. Confused about why she suddenly felt like crying, then without warning, Daniel shifted into a powerful section of the piece. His fingers raced across the keys, creating a storm of sound that made the crowd gasp. It was beautiful and intense, a burst of strength, pain, and resilience all mixed into one moment. No one had expected such a performance from someone who looked so broken. The teens who had mocked him earlier exchanged shocked glances. The boy who joked about the piano crying looked embarrassed now. His phone was still recording, but his smile had faded. He whispered, "Guys, he's amazing." The group didn't reply. They were too caught up in the music. Daniel didn't know that he had already become the center of the entire park. More people were gathering from every direction, drawn by the sound echoing through the trees. Joggers slowed down to listen. Cyclists stopped beside benches. Even people eating at nearby food stands paused mid-bite, wanting to understand who was playing. A little girl sat near the ground, staring at Daniel with wide eyes. She tugged her mother's sleeve and said, "Mommy, he sounds like the music from the movies." Her mother nodded softly, unable to explain what she felt. It didn't matter that Daniel wore old clothes or looked tired. In this moment, he was someone extraordinary to everyone watching. Daniel's hands glided into another softer melody, this one filled with longing and memories he had buried deep inside. His shoulders trembled slightly as he played. He didn't cry, but it felt like every note carried a tear he had never allowed himself to shed. People who listened felt those tears too, some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them like a warm wave nearby. A food vendor stepped out of his stall and crossed his arms. He listened with surprise. Who would have thought the guy people laughed at could play like that? He whispered to no one in particular. A police officer on patrol slowed her steps, looking at the crowd, wondering what was happening. When she noticed Daniel at the piano, she softened, moved by the beauty of the moment. Daniel's fingers slowed down again, drifting into a gentle pattern that felt like a soft goodnight song. The park grew completely silent. Even the usual honking from distant streets seemed to fade away. Everyone's attention was locked on him, on the man who was transforming an ordinary afternoon into something unforgettable. And then, he played a particular phrase, a small, familiar melody that meant more to him than anything else. It was the lullaby his mother used to hum while he practiced. A fragile, loving tune she created just for him. His heart squeezed tightly inside his chest. The memory hit him with full force. The crowd didn't know the story behind the melody, but they felt it. Everyone felt a heaviness, a softness, a beauty that couldn't be explained with words. A mother in the crowd hugged her child closer. A young man took off his headphones, realizing nothing he had ever listened to felt as real as what he was hearing now. As Daniel approached the end of the piece, his hands began to slow. His fingers shook not from fear, but from emotion. The final notes drifted out into the air like feathers carried by the wind. Gentle and fragile, the moment they left the piano, the entire park held its breath. For a second, there was pure silence. Not even a bird chirped. Daniel opened his eyes slowly, as if waking up from a dream. He looked up and finally saw the huge crowd standing around him, staring at him with wide, emotional eyes. People who laughed at him minutes earlier now looked at him with awe and respect. And in that powerful silence, everyone understood one thing: the man they didn't take seriously had just created something unforgettable. Something that none of them would ever forget. Daniel sat frozen on the small bench as the final notes faded into the air. His chest rose and fell as he tried to catch his breath. He hadn't played like that in years, and the weight of it sat heavy in his heart. When he finally looked up, he expected people to laugh again or walk away uninterested. But instead, he saw something he never imagined. Dozens of faces, strangers, gazing at him with disbelief, softness and wonder. For several seconds no one moved. It felt like the whole park was made of stone. Every person stood perfectly still, as if the world had paused just to honor his music. Then suddenly, someone clapped. One small clap echoed loudly in the silence. Then another joined, then two more, and within moments, applause filled the entire park like a wave crashing through the trees. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. He had never seen so many people clapping for him. Some had tears in their eyes, some were smiling, some were shaking their heads in amazement. A little girl near the front jumped up excitedly and clapped with all her tiny strength. A boy yelled, "That was awesome!" Daniel felt overwhelmed. He didn't know what to do. He lowered his head, almost embarrassed. His fingers trembled on his lap. The applause went on and on. People weren't just clapping, they were celebrating him. A man from the crowd stepped forward and said, "Sir, that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard." Others nodded in agreement, but the real story was happening quietly, behind the applause, without Daniel knowing. People in the crowd had recorded almost the entire performance on their phones. Dozens of videos were already uploaded on social media with captions like, "This man in the park made me cry," and "Never judge a person by how they look." The videos spread fast, so fast that even while Daniel sat there, confused and emotional, his face and music were already traveling around the world. A teenage girl from the group who had mocked him earlier stepped closer. Her eyes were red, not from crying but from guilt. She whispered softly, "I'm sorry we laughed at you." Her friends stood behind her, heads lowered. feeling the same guilt. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. He didn't say anything, but his silence forgave them. An elderly woman leaned on her walking stick and said, "Your mother must be proud of you." Daniel felt a sudden sting in his heart. His throat tightened. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he nodded gently. The woman smiled at him as if she understood everything without needing to hear a single word. Then someone in the back shouted, "Play another one." Others joined in. "Please play again." "One more." "Don't stop." But Daniel's hands felt weak now. His body felt heavy. All the emotions he had kept inside for years had burst open through his music, leaving him exhausted. He whispered, I don't know if I can." But before he could explain, something unexpected happened. A man in a suit pushed through the crowd. He carried a camera and wore a badge from a well-known local news channel. He introduced himself quickly and said, "Sir, we need to talk to you. Your performance just went viral. Millions of people are sharing your video as we speak." Daniel blinked, confused. "Viral?" He repeated quietly. The word felt strange in his mouth. He had never gone viral in his life. He didn't even own a smartphone anymore. The reporter nodded, showing him his own phone. Daniel watched a video of himself playing. The video already had thousands of views within minutes. Comments flooded the screen. People writing things like, "This man is a genius," "I'm crying," "Find him and give him a stage." Daniel stared at the phone. Unable to breathe for a moment, he looked at the crowd again. At all the faces full of emotion, support, and admiration. His heart felt like it was swelling too big for his chest. After years of feeling invisible, unwanted, ignored, suddenly the world was looking at him, really looking, really listening. The reporter asked gently, "Sir, what's your name?" Daniel hesitated. He felt shy, almost afraid. But then he remembered his mother's voice. Remembered the promise he made to her. His lips parted slowly. And he whispered, "My name is Daniel." The reporter smiled. "Daniel, the world needs to hear you. People need to know your story." Others around nodded, whispering to each other. "Daniel, Daniel." The name spread through the crowd like the melody he had just played. But Daniel wasn't thinking about fame or attention. He wasn't thinking about interviews or videos. He was thinking about one thing only: his mother. He looked up at the sky gently and whispered inside his heart, "Mom." People are listening again. A soft breeze brushed his face as if the world itself answered him. And for the first time in many years, Daniel didn't feel alone. He felt seen, heard, and alive. And this was only the beginning. Daniel sat quietly on the piano bench while the crowd slowly settled around him. The applause had faded, but the excitement in the air had not. People still whispered his name to each other. "Daniel. Daniel, who is he?" Someone in the back repeated. "That man made the whole park silent." Others nodded. Unable to believe how they had almost ignored him earlier, Daniel didn't know what to do. He kept staring at his trembling hands as if they belonged to someone else. These were the same hands that once carried groceries, lifted boxes, cleaned floors. These were the same hands that had struggled for years. But today they had done something he never imagined. They brought his music back to life. Around him, phones kept buzzing as more notifications popped up. The reporter who had come earlier stepped forward again. "Daniel, your video is exploding online," he said softly. "Within minutes, it has crossed 100,000 views. People are sharing it everywhere." Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't know how to react to something so big. So sudden, a woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "My father played piano before he passed away," she said. "When you played, I felt like I heard him again. Thank you for that." Daniel's lips trembled slightly as he nodded. He didn't know how to handle so much love at once. He had grown used to silence and loneliness, not kindness and praise. Then another person stepped forward. A man in his 30s with a backpack. "Sir, I used to study music but gave up. He said, after hearing you. I want to start again. Daniel blinked slowly, surprised. He had never thought that his music could inspire strangers, let alone change their decisions. But what truly shocked him was the voice of a little boy who walked up shyly. Holding a small toy piano in his hands, "Can you teach me?" The boy asked, his innocent eyes shone with hope. His mother tried to pull him back. Embarrassed, "Sweetheart, he's busy." But Daniel smiled gently and shook his head. He reached out and touched the boy's shoulder softly. "Maybe someday," he whispered. The boy beamed as if someone had handed him the whole sky. Meanwhile, the reporter kept receiving updates on his phone. "Daniel, the news stations want to feature you," he explained. "People from music foundations are asking about you. They want to help you restart your career." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. His heart started pounding again. Career, the word felt unfamiliar to him. It had been so long since anyone talked about his future. For years, he lived only day to day, surviving, working small jobs, trying not to disappear inside his own sadness. But now, for the first time since his mother's death, he could see a tiny bit of light at the end of his long dark road. As he tried to process everything, a gentle hand touched his shoulder. Daniel turned and saw an old man with silver hair and soft eyes. He spoke in a calm voice. "Young man, I have worked with music students for decades," he said. "And what you played today didn't come from talent alone. It came from pain, love, and truth. That is something rare, something the world needs." Daniel lowered his gaze, unsure how to accept such powerful words. But the old man lifted his chin slightly and said, "Don't hide again. You have a gift, share it." While they talked, more people kept joining the crowd. Someone shouted that the video had crossed 500,000 views. Another yelled, "He's trending." A group of college students screamed excitedly when they recognized him from the video that had already reached their campus group chats. Daniel felt dizzy. The world around him was spinning faster and faster. He stood from the bench slowly, unsure whether to smile or cry. His whole life had changed within 1 hour. He felt like he was living inside someone else's story, not his own. Someone in the crowd asked, "Where do you live, Daniel?" Another person added, "Do you have a place to stay?" Daniel hesitated. He didn't want to admit he was barely surviving, living from shelter to shelter, and sometimes spending nights on park benches. But he didn't have to answer. One woman stepped forward and said loudly, "If he doesn't have a home, we will help him find one." The crowd nodded instantly. People raised their hands, offering food, money, support. Someone shouted, "He deserves better." The entire park echoed in agreement. Daniel's throat tightened again. No one had ever fought for him before. No one had ever cared enough to say such things. The kindness felt overwhelming, almost unreal. The reporter asked softly, "Daniel, do you realize what's happening?" Daniel looked at the sky, his eyes filling with emotion. A small smile touched his lips, filled with both sadness and hope. "I think I'm waking up," he whispered. People didn't know exactly what he meant, but they felt the weight of his words. They felt the years of suffering hidden behind them. And as the sun began to set, painting the sky with orange and gold, the park glowed with new warmth, because everyone standing there knew one thing: this man, this stranger, this broken soul who came to play an old piano, was no longer invisible. He had become someone unforgettable. Daniel stood in the middle of the crowd, surrounded by strangers who no longer looked at him with judgment or doubt, but with admiration and respect. The park felt warmer now, alive with energy. His heart beat fast, but for the first time in many years, it didn't beat from fear. It beat from hope, from disbelief, from something new growing inside him. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, someone approached him with a calm, confident smile. He was a tall man wearing a dark coat, carrying a leather case. His voice was gentle but firm as he said, "Daniel, may I speak with you?" Daniel nodded, unsure who this new person was. The man opened his case and pulled out a simple card, handing it to Daniel. It read, "Harmony Arts Foundation, Talent Outreach Director." "My name is Mr. Keaton," the man continued softly. "Our foundation helps musicians who have lost their path. We saw your video minutes ago, and we came as fast as we could." Daniel stared at him, stunned. He had heard of the foundation years ago, back when he still believed he had a future. They were famous for discovering hidden talent, rebuilding broken careers, and giving forgotten musicians a second chance. Mr. Keaton's eyes softened as he added, "Daniel, your music is rare. It carries emotion most trained musicians can't produce. We would like to help you come back." "If you want," Daniel swallowed, his breath shaking. "Come back," he whispered, as if the words were too heavy for him. Mr. Keaton nodded. "Yes, Daniel, come back to music, come back to life." Before Daniel could speak, cheers rose from the crowd. People clapped, shouted, and encouraged him. One voice yelled, "Take the chance, Daniel." Another shouted, "You deserve this." Even the teens who mocked him earlier were cheering now, red-faced but sincere. Daniel looked around, overwhelmed. He had spent years feeling invisible, feeling like nothing he did mattered, but today, strangers believed in him more than he believed in himself. That realization shook into his core. His eyes filled with tears he had spent years holding back. Just then, the little boy with the toy piano ran forward again, tugging Daniel's shirt timidly. "Mr. Daniel," he said softly, "you should play for the whole world." Daniel's heart broke and healed at the same time from those innocent words. He bent down and touched the boy's shoulder gently. "Thank you," he whispered, "Mr." Keaton saw Daniel's trembling emotions and stepped closer. "Daniel, we're prepared to offer you something immediately," he said. "We can provide you with a place to stay tonight. Tomorrow we will begin paperwork for your training program. New clothes, medical checkups, psychological support, everything you need." Daniel's breathing hitched. This kind of help was more than he ever dreamed of. But the biggest shock came next, Mr. Keaton cleared his throat and said, "Also, there's a scholarship in your mother's name. It was started many years ago by local musicians who admired her dedication to your talent. The fund has been waiting for you, Daniel. All it needed was for you to return." Daniel froze. His feet felt glued to the ground. His hands covered his mouth as his shoulders shook. The world around him blurred. He hadn't heard his mother's name spoken with love in years. He whispered through trembling lips, "My mother." Mr. Keaton nodded with respect. "She believed in you, Daniel, more than anyone else ever could." Tears spilled down Daniel's face. He didn't hide them this time. The crowd grew silent, watching him with empathy. He looked up at the sky, remembering his mother's tired face, her loving smile, her gentle words, "Mr." Keaton placed a hand on his back, offering support. "Daniel, this is your chance to honor her," he said. "Your music deserves a stage, your story deserves to be told, and your mother's belief deserves to live on." Daniel wiped his eyes slowly. He felt something warm spreading inside him, something he had buried under years of pain. It was strength. It was courage. It was the memory of a promise he made long ago. He took a deep breath, looked at the crowd, and said in a trembling voice, I want to try." The crowd erupted in cheers, louder than anything he had heard in years. People clapped, whistled, celebrated. It felt like fireworks were going off inside his chest. Mr. Keaton smiled proudly. "Good," he said. "We begin tomorrow morning." He handed Daniel an envelope containing hotel arrangements and a meeting schedule. Daniel stared at it, still afraid it might disappear if he blinked too fast. A woman stepped forward with a soft smile and whispered, "Your mother is smiling right now." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, feeling that truth deep in his heart. He whispered back, "I hope so," as the crowd slowly dispersed. Daniel stayed beside the piano for a moment longer. Touching the keys with gratitude, he whispered quietly, "Thank you for giving me back my life." He did not know yet, but the next day, everything would change even more. His story, his music, his identity, everything was about to rise again. This was not just a second chance. It was the beginning of a new life. Daniel followed Mr. Keaton through the park's path as the sky turned darker and the streetlights slowly blinked on. The day felt unreal to him, as if everything had happened inside a dream. His heart was still racing from all the emotions, all the kindness, and all the hope he wasn't used to feeling. The piano, the crowd, the applause, it replayed in his mind again and again. Mr. Keaton guided him to a waiting car near the park entrance. The driver opened the door with a respectful nod. "We're taking you to a hotel for the night, Mr. Keaton explained gently. "You need rest. Tomorrow begins a new chapter for you." Daniel nodded slowly, still feeling as if he was floating as the car moved through the city. Daniel pressed his forehead against the window, watching the lights blur into long glowing lines. Cars passed by, buildings stood tall, people walked in the streets, all living their own lives, and yet he wasn't invisible among them anymore. He wasn't just another tired man drifting through the world unnoticed. Something inside him had shifted forever. When they reached the hotel, Daniel stepped out hesitantly. The bright lobby lights made him blink. A staff member greeted him kindly. "Welcome, sir." Daniel wasn't used to being called sir. It felt strange, almost too respectful. But Mr. Keaton placed a hand on his shoulder, guiding him forward. "Get a good night's sleep," he said. "Tomorrow we will talk more." When Daniel entered his room, he stood still for a long moment. The bed was soft and clean, the room warm, and there was quietness that didn't feel lonely. It felt safe. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hands shaking slightly, and then, for the first time in years, he cried openly, not just from sadness, but from relief, from gratitude. From the weight of a burden finally slipping off his shoulders, he whispered, "Mom, I think I'm going to be okay." Morning arrived gently, with sunlight slipping through the curtains. Daniel woke slowly, surprised at how rested he felt. He took a deep breath and looked around the room. Today was the day he would learn more about his future. Today was the day things truly changed. After breakfast, Mr. Keaton met him in the lobby again. "Ready?" he asked. Daniel nodded. "I'm ready to try." They rode together to the Harmony Arts Foundation building, a tall glass structure filled with young musicians, teachers, and hopeful talent. People inside greeted Daniel warmly. Some already recognized him from the viral video. "That's him," someone whispered. "The piano man from the park." Daniel felt his face warm. But this time the attention didn't scare him, it encouraged him. Inside an office, Mr. Keaton sat across from Daniel, placing a folder on the table. "Inside this folder," he explained, "is your scholarship, housing assistance, therapy sessions, and a plan to help you become a performer again." Daniel stared at the folder, feeling a wave of emotion washed over him. "You're giving me all of this?" he whispered. "Yes," Mr. Keaton replied, "and not because we feel pity, but because you deserve it." Daniel hesitated before asking, "Can I please see the scholarship in my mother's name?" Mr. Keaton nodded and opened a separate envelope. Inside was a small paper stating the Margaret Reed Memorial Music Fund. Daniel's hands shook as he held the paper. Margaret Reed, his mother's name, written with honor, with respect, with love. "She believed in your future even when you couldn't," Mr. Keaton said softly. Daniel pressed the paper to his chest, feeling his mother's presence as strongly as if she were standing beside him. The next weeks passed like a beautiful blur. Daniel attended music lessons, therapy sessions, and confidence training. His fingers grew stronger again, his posture straighter, his smile more natural. He dressed better, walked taller, spoke clearer, and slowly. The world began to see the musician he truly was, the one he had tried so hard to bury. Then came the night he would never forget. Harmony Arts arranged a small concert to introduce Daniel to the world again. The stage was simple but elegant, candles lit along the sides, and a spotlight waiting for him as he waited behind the curtain. Daniel felt the same nervousness he used to feel as a boy.